Today is June 1st, 2023. We made it to June, folks. Hey, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to make a little bit of a public service announcement. If you take a look at the releases for the Chillinois podcast, I think I'm about to pull it up here. You'll notice that the episodes are kind of in a random order. So, for example, the last episode that I see is 284, but then the episode after that is 289, and then the episode after that is 288, and the episode after that is 282. Where are the missing numbers? You can find them on patreon.com/Chillinois. We release most of our episodes for streaming exclusively there. So if you're wondering what the hell's going on, those episodes will come out in the future, but for now, they're available exclusively at patreon.com/Chillinois. I want to introduce my guest today, Ethan. Ethan, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, yeah, excited to chat with you. I just want to give some background as to like how we got linked up. So I got an email this morning. Let me pull that up really quick. Subject line, a plea for help. Hi, you don't know me, but I'm an industry employee that works for Sunnyside/Cresco Labs. It almost blows my mind that how we haven't come to you until now, but the corporate exploitation we receive is so out of control. They haphazardly bought one of the first buildings in Wrigleyville. They went over a year with no heat, and now 2 years. No heat, and now they can barely keep the bathrooms functioning, for which is a huge OSHA violation. They've lied time and time again about the state of the bathrooms, and OSHA won't come see for themselves. On top of that, a member of management let it slip to us that corporate thinks we are, and this is a direct quote, a bunch of crying toddlers, end quote, all because we want basic labor rights and a decent building to work in. We have noticed the union, but this thing does close to nothing for us, but besides get out of this cruel punishment system they have in place for attendance. Scheduling is a whole other issue, but I could go on and on. We're just incredibly helpless, so I thought I could reach out to you for a little help/expertise. We need this horrible treatment exposed so we feel less trapped, is my thinking. So this person reached out to me, and I basically asked, hey, would you be willing to speak out on the record, or could you contact me with a few individuals that would be willing to? And that's how I got connected with you, Ethan, and we might be having some more folks on the show in the future to share their perspectives. I just shared the email and how it got to me. Why don't you just take the floor and talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about, man?
For sure.
Cool.
Well, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff in that email is spot on. And it is the sentiment of 90%. I'm just saying 90% because you never know, but I'm pretty sure it's everybody at the place shares those sentiments. I'm only here because I recently left Sunnyside. Whenever I was working there, we would be talking about how unfair everything felt, our mistreatment. And a lot of us felt like we couldn't do anything because of the job insecurity. People didn't want to lose their jobs. Even considering a lot of these issues, this is still a lot of people's favorite jobs they've ever had. A lot of people will say this is the first time they're selling something that they actually care about or connect with, or, so we actually put up with a lot and are happy to, because we're finally working in an industry that we love, but the industry itself is making it so unbelievably nightmarish that it's intolerable. It's intolerable. So I know that the bathrooms were brought up. This has been one of the main issues that we've been trying to push, because it's very clearly marked in OSHA and also in our contract about how many people are allowed to be in the building per how many bathrooms. And the biggest issue is that they bought this building with 2 years to do renovations and all that. And
And
they
we're
did.
talking about the Wrigleyville building, right?
Correct, correct. Which I'll repeat this many times, but this is the flagship location of the entire country for Sunnyside, is the Wrigleyville location. So just to keep that in mind. So they bought this new building that we moved into, and they didn't do any renovations whatsoever. So lo and behold, when we're open for business, we start having all these problems. The toilets start clogging, the AC isn't working, the heat isn't working. It's a nice building. It used to be the old John Barleycorn Center, which I had never been to. They had a second floor, which they originally used for us to have as a lounge, which was very nice. But the floorboards were buckling up. There was all sorts of stuff just left up there. No cleaning been done, in my opinion, alleged, whatever. And they had to, put up like safety hazard posters up there. And eventually, when we brought that to OSHA, they just locked us out of the second floor lounge break room area, and we have not been able to get back there since. This is now maybe a year ago. Um, it puts us into then our only break room, which is one small room that would be maybe 1.5 times the size of a private bathroom. Keep in mind, we have up to 30 to 40 people working at a time. So people are being crammed into these break rooms. Again, a lot of these things are things we'd be willing to put up with and actually don't really speak out upon. But it gets so ridiculous from management. The response that we get from management, the belittlement, in my opinion, the defensiveness, the gaslighting, in my opinion, like full on, is very ridiculous. I don't mean to ramble too much. If you have any questions, please cut me off at any time. But in my opinion, it would be a big difference if management said, like, listen, this company sucks. They don't want to spend the money to have you guys have an adequate working environment, but this is what we got, and we're really sorry about it. But what we're getting instead is, why are you complaining? This is a job. This is what it's like. Blah, 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 blah. We literally were told from a representative of corporate that we need to be more grateful about how the company treats us. And all we've really done is just raise these issues. We haven't walked out ever, despite me begging my coworkers to on the daily. And all of that is issues with the building. The clientele are also another issue. We're smack dab in the middle of Wrigleyville, so a lot of drunk people and a lot of boomers. And that is sort of the worst of both worlds when it comes to retail and how people treat workers in retail. We have our store has a walk-in section. So for people who don't know what they're getting or want some advice, they can come and talk to a representative. But they just have our workers just like standing about in the store, waiting for people to walk up to them. And we've had I've lost count of how many times women, especially, have come forward to express, they're getting sexually harassed. They are getting just harassed by these customers. And management they literally will come back with like basically eye rolls or like, why are you complaining? Very much this, we're a bunch of crying baby toddlers sentiment. Everything that we've gotten to this point for us, we've had to fight very hard for. I'm talking about samples or tips, something that doesn't impact the bottom line of the company whatsoever. A voluntary, letting the customer voluntarily just give a little extra to the cashier. We had to beg for months and months and months and months for. We had to go to the union for it. And the union doesn't help us anyway. I'm not sure about the ins and outs of
Now,
unions.
are you unionized?
We are unionized.
Okay.
However, turnover is so great at this location that nobody who currently works there, and since I worked there, which was a couple of years ago, nobody who worked there had signed the contract. Everybody who had signed the contract for the union had quit. So we were also trying to get an updated contract, but that didn't really ever happen. Though this is my first unionized job, which has been, despite my complaints with the union, it's been very liberating to be able to be in the work environment and tell your manager, like, this is stupid, and not have to worry about getting fired, for example. There was one time I was that being said, there was one time I was brought into the office and got a write-up because I refused to clean the bathrooms. I told them, like, you guys need to hire a crew. And they were like, well, we do hire a crew. What they really mean is literally one person comes about and just kind of mops, a few times a week. This was after my time, but they had then hired a new cleaning crew. And when they weren't doing a good enough job, the workers said to management, can you talk to the cleaning crew and make sure that they get this and this and this area? And they literally said, no, we can't. The cleaning crew only speaks Polish.
Uh, okay. This is
These are
their
the kind of
flagship
things,
location, right?
the flagship location,
Mhm.
which I don't know if this is kosher for me to share, but allegedly they make $100,000 every single day in that store alone. And this is another part of our complaint. This is $1 billion corporation easily. On our slowest day, we will make 70 to 80K on that day. So to sit around and be like, well, we don't have the money, we don't have the funds, you just have to, this is how it works. It's a lie. It's literally a lie. I would watch how we make everyone's paycheck every 10 minutes to a half hour,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then they just got Illinois joined a few other states in giving the cannabis companies, and these are all cannabis companies in Illinois, by the way, but the only ones that are active, of course, right now are the big ones. We just gave them 280E relief. One of the first. So they basically, I can't remember what somebody said exactly. So people should listen back to other episodes we've done talking about the subject. But I believe that they said something to the effect of they're probably celebrating right now because this is like millions of dollars basically just being handed to them. Again,
Yeah,
I am not a tax expert,
sure.
so folks, but 280E is something they're pushing for at the federal level. They've not been able to get anywhere. So what do? Let's go down to the state level, get a little bit of
Interesting.
relief. And they got it done in Illinois and a few other states at this point. So to your point of, oh, we don't have enough money. Well, you just got handed more money. Now,
Yeah.
I do want to say, and I don't mean to take us on a tangent because I am, again, by no means a tax expert or a finance expert, which is kind of what we just got into. But there is very much an open question of whether or not any cannabis company is truly profitable right now. I think there are certainly a number of large companies that are certainly making a lot of money. But I think the big secret in cannabis is that this entire thing is a pump and dump. So we're artificially raising the value of prices for products so that in Chicago you can be making $90 an eighth, right?
Literally.
And you pump it up, pump up the stock, pump it up, and somebody buys you out and you leave, right? That's the plan. They're all shooting for this, including new social equity licensees. They've come on the show and say that, hey, the backup plan is to just sell out. That's kind of the end goal, because short term, long term, I actually was going back to a podcast that I did in gosh, I just had it up. I think it was May of no, July 4th of 2020, I released an episode with Mike Fouché, and he talks about the fact, he said he mentions that many people in finance question whether or not the cannabis industry is profitable in the short term or in the long term. He goes on to say that he hears that most people running cannabis companies are running them with the expectation that they'll make their money when they sell their operation. Um, so they're not in it for the long haul, folks. They're not in it for
Right.
you. They're in it for their
Yeah.
shareholders, which is who they
Right.
report to, so
Right.
they can sell their company and sell it out to some big alcohol or tobacco company. And again, though, that's a whole other topic. Let's stick. I mean, if you have something to add, certainly.
Sure, sure. Well, I do find that to be pretty interesting because these companies make, granted, I'm sure it costs a lot of money to run these companies. There's so many regulations in this state, especially.
For example, just
Um,
really quick, it seems like
mhm.
most of them don't even own their own cultivation centers, which is a weird.
Yeah,
They lease them back to these like bigger companies, and if people want to look into it, innovative industrial properties, if you literally look up their website, they talk about how they own, frankly, more than any entity is allowed to in Illinois. I've asked
yeah,
the Illinois
yeah.
Department of Ag about it. They didn't have an answer, but
Hmm.
just I wanted to throw that in there. Like they
Sure.
don't even own a lot of their things. They seem to be leasing it back. So I don't know like what kind of money these people are making, you know?
Hmm. Well, it is an interesting question because throughout my time there, another thing that was happening was uh, cuts over cuts over cuts to things that us workers would depend on. One of the most recent things is at the Wrigleyville location, they cut security down to one guard for the entire store.
Wow.
Um, for reference, we used to have 5 at a time because there needs to be a lot of different things that security needs to do. So, for example, if they were to hire an electrician or a plumber to come in to fix something, security needs to be with that person the whole time to make sure that this isn't
But
nothing.
sorry to cut you off. I just
You're
also want to
good.
show for perspective. This is called Sunnyside Wrigleyville because check this out, folks. I think this is important for your conversation about security. Here's Sunnyside
Right.
Wrigleyville. Let's go down
Yep.
the road. Let me just show you how far away. You can see Wrigleyville right there, but
Right.
I'm gonna go down the road a little bit. Okay.
1 block.
1 block. It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there.
So
So what I'm
we
saying is there's a lot of people in that area. Continue.
a ton of people. We didn't have slow days, to tell the truth. We don't have slow days. My best advice for customers is to go somewhere else just to give the employees a break, because I'm telling you, in their morning meetings, management would go over and say like, oh, so and so saw 120 customers yesterday, let's give them a round of applause, as if that weren't a massive failure on behalf of the company, because they only have 3 or 4 registers going at a time, even at peak. So these people are completely overworked, and we're supposed to celebrate that somehow, which is very strange to me. But like, for example, if when the garbage people come, I've been talking about security, when the garbage people come, we can't just open the garbage and give it to them. Security has to come and open the garbage door to give to the people.
Like
So it's
from
not like
behind
secure.
your counter.
No, no, no. So like we will have a trash
Oh,
room
okay.
that's in like a garage, which, by the way, the garage is now the new break room. So last I heard,
Nice.
which is very cool. Um, yeah, so they were announcing security cuts as I was leaving. Um, and I'm when I went to visit not too long ago, there was only one security person there. So I don't think that they have changed or have plans to change that policy. It's also strange because this is right before game season. It's not like they're doing this to make cuts during the off season. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah. And I feel like I cut you off. You were saying something
Oh,
about
that's
the
okay.
security letting out the trash. I feel like maybe I lost you
Oh,
there.
no, I'm just trying to convey that security has to do a lot more than just look out for somebody who might be trying to rob the place. There is a
Gotcha.
lot of little things just because of regulations and how these laws work, that security has to do. Um, I think it's interesting what you were saying about like who owns these companies and how they profit and things like that. Because something else I've known, and this is more industry wide. This is industry wide, but it's sort of impossible to like pick and choose which companies you would like to support for better companies or whatever, because it seems like all the money just ends up going to the same executives. A lot of the places, a lot of the people own um, a lot of different cultivation. Well, I guess you just said they don't own the cultivation centers. I'm sure they maybe rent it out or something.
Right, but they're
Um,
to your point, they're issued to them, so
yeah,
it's under their name. Yep.
and it doesn't matter. I mean, you go to literally any dispensary. I actually haven't been to a dispensary outside of Illinois, but you go to any dispensary here, and you have like the same 3 companies to choose from: Ozone, which has an alleged, Cresco, which is just a terrible company, things like that.
Yeah, I'll pull up a article here in a second about transparency, but you just brought up a very interesting point. You can't really tell. You cannot tell who actually is involved in these companies or if they have ties to each other. It's like I'm telling you, it's going to be a big story one of these days. I have very
Interesting.
little doubts about it. Let's pull up the history here. We've been making a history document, just by the way, for folks that are nerds about this stuff. If you want to see V1 of the document, so I might be showing you stuff maybe you haven't seen that we've released so far, but if you do want to have like a copy of your own version 1, look up episode 232 of our podcast and go to the podcast description. So the podcast covers the document, but you can also just download the document yourself. It has citations for everything we cover. And let's look up transparency in the document, because so yeah. On May 3rd, 2020, the Chicago Tribune reported that marijuana entrepreneurs are starting to rake in millions of dollars a month in Illinois, to your point, as customers line up to buy newly legal weed. But who's profiting from those sales remains secret. Regulators say state law bars the release of almost all the information businesses have to submit to get lucrative licenses to grow or sell cannabis. As a result, the public can't see the records that could show whether pot businesses have questionable funding sources or ties to unsavory people. That's proven problematic in other state regulated industries such as gambling, where revelations of reputed mob ties have sent officials scrambling. Concerns about lack of transparency came up last year, aka 2019, before the passage of the law that legalized pot. Sponsors of the bill, Senator Heather Staines and Representative Kelly Cassidy, vowed to make ownership data completely accessible, and I quote, despite that pledge, their bill passed with a confidentiality provision that the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation recently cited in denying the Chicago Tribune's open records requests for applications and ownership information. The state is applying similar secrecy to cultivation businesses. The Department of Agriculture responded to the Tribune's request for application and ownership information submitted by growers with documents so heavily redacted they yielded little information about who actually controls the businesses. The Tribune at the time was fighting that ruling. I don't know where this ended up, folks. If you know more than me, dig into it. They're disputing the release of those public records. And I just want to say that to wrap up this thought, sorry, you just brought up a really golden thought, and then we can get back to Sunnyside stuff. Donald Craven, an attorney for the Illinois Press Association, said enforcing secrecy invites trouble. Quote, marijuana businesses are making money with the state, by the state, and for the state, he said. Why shouldn't we know the names of who is partaking in that opportunity? Now, and here's where I will actually wrap. We certainly continue to talk about this, but Pamela Altoff, who's been on this show, she's the executive director of the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois, said that owners of, and by the way, the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois represents all of the largest cannabis businesses in Illinois, in the United States, in fact. She said people are very sensitive, not knowing what may occur if that information were available to anybody at the federal level. So she says that the information should be kept secret because you don't know what might happen at the federal level. Anyway, sorry for going on for so long, but you just brought up a very,
No, that's
very
great.
important piece of history.
It's very interesting, and this secrecy is just so ironic considering the whole reason we made it legal is because we kind of all agreed that if we all know what's going on in the market, it's going to be safer for everyone. I mean, that was one of the many reasons why the war on drugs failed, is just made the market more dangerous for people. And wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but is she saying if the federal government were to look into these things, we might not be able to get away with it? Is that what you were saying?
She's kind of implying that, but that, to
Okay.
continue on the article, that hasn't stopped some of the dozens of states that have legalized by allowing the release of that information much more than Illinois.
Oh,
So, for
interesting.
example, Pennsylvania and Ohio includes the names of owners on state websites.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that Illinois transparency issue goes back to fucking 2013, and we cover that in episode 232. We have direct quotes about the original conversations of transparency, and it all goes back to the original program where they were saying like, well, we want to keep it under lock and key because we don't, there was actually a lot of allegations of political insider picking the licenses, right? So they're like, well, we got to
Sure,
keep it
sure.
confidential so that nobody knows. But I'm sorry, that's just a slippery slope. And
Yeah, for sure.
here's where it comes into play. The lack of information makes it difficult to know whether clout heavy entrepreneurs or big political donors are the ones who won licenses. So even without the information we're talking about right now, the Tribune used public records, and we showed you how they found these records on episode 232. You can follow the money trail. They found cultivation businesses linked to more than $630,000 in campaign funds, and that number would undoubtedly be larger if more information were available to the public.
Sure, sure.
But that's just what we can find, right?
Wow,
So
wow. Wow, that's
crazy
very
shit.
interesting. That is
Crazy.
pretty crazy. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, this might be just me, but it was just kind of sad entering this industry and seeing that it is an industry. Like this is just yet another thing that has been corporatized, and we just kind of have to deal with the side effects of that. I
And I
think
go ahead.
I think I could be wrong, but I think Montana has a really good home grow system. A lot of people, maybe I'm wrong, are just able to just grow on their own, and then that's been flourishing there.
Yeah,
I thought I
I'm
had
not
heard that.
I'm not sure about Montana, but I know that
Yeah,
Minnesota just legalized home grow, and
right.
they also have an unlimited number of licenses, which
Oh
should be interesting.
wow, interesting.
But that remains to be seen how that looks. But I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, just you brought kind of back up this. It's like, damn, this is just another industry, and I wanted to, it's like sometimes it's tough for me to ask this question, but
Hmm.
um, I guess I wanted to start with, before I get to the questions harder for me to ask, let's start with the idea of the union, because I feel
Yeah.
like that's a very important place we started. The email mentioned something, you mentioned something, and I've been hearing it from the different locations that have unionized that all of our problems are fixed, which, right, I know nobody expected that just with a wave of the wand. I don't think anybody would have foolishly expected that, but maybe somebody did. I don't mean to characterize it as foolish. Maybe
Sure. Oh,
you were led
sure.
astray, because I know that these messages can give you some hope if you're in a situation like you've described. But I guess I wanted to ask about kind of that idea that it doesn't seem like, and I've heard it from many different locations, but if you could elaborate on it, if you're able to, like, it doesn't seem like unionization helped. Maybe in some ways, but not in. Go ahead.
I can't speak to what it was like before it was unionized. Actually, I can a little bit because I had some people who were still working there at the time before it was unionized, and they tell me it was way worse. It was really really bad. It
Okay.
was unbelievably exploitative. So I cannot speak to specifically what those conditions were. What I can speak to is the conditions that we were experiencing, and the help that we were requesting from the union was not ever addressed ever. It was sort of like, okay, we got you. Yeah, make sure you have this issue in writing. We'll put it in our records, and then we never heard from them ever again about it. I will say, the name of the union is escaping me, but I'm pretty sure that they mainly represent supermarkets.
Is
So
it Teamsters or UFCW?
I think it was UFC. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
UFCW. Okay.
UFCW. So I think this might have just not been their territory. I don't know. I don't know much about
I
what
mean,
the
yeah, they're
union
the
process is
United
like.
Food Workers, something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, people have asked about that in the past. Like, maybe we shouldn't be teaming up with people in the restaurant industry. Maybe there should be like a
Sure.
cannabis union, you know?
Right. And maybe it's just too early for that. I wouldn't know.
Perhaps, yeah.
Um, and though I will say I went to Zenleaf the other day. I will say I went to a dispensary the other day that other than Sunnyside, and I ran into a former coworker, and I was like, "Oh, you must be so much happier here." And he said, "No." Even considering all the problems we're having at our dispensary, we also had people coming to us because it was worse at other places.
Mm,
So I think this is sort of what I meant by like, oh, this is just another corporate thing that just takes advantage of everything. It's going to suck wherever you go.
yeah. And that's kind of what my tough question is about. But I just wanted
Yeah.
to still give more room about unionizing. Like, is there any,
Yeah.
like, of course, like, I know you talk to anybody in a union, the contract's never perfect. It is a give and take process. Sometimes you lose things that you loved, but sometimes you
Yeah.
get things that are really important to membership, right?
Yeah.
But I guess, can you give me any more, like, what?
Well, now I'm remembering that part of our contract, one of the ways that the company agreed to sign on to a union contract was we had to sign a no strike clause. So we weren't allowed to walk out. We weren't protected in that way.
Mm,
So I think that's kind of speaking to what you were saying. We did have to give up a lot. Maybe we gave up too much because we didn't really have a way to respond to in a meaningful way to what was going on. And like I said, this is my first unionized job. Um, I I am philosophically in favor of unions, but this was just my first practical experience of it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing your insights there.
Mhm.
Time for my tough question. It's not like
Okay.
it's not like you're gonna, it's like a curveball and you're gonna,
Sure.
whoa, I missed
Sure.
that one. It's just
Yeah.
like it, now that you're out of the industry, it doesn't feel as hard to ask you, but I definitely, it's hard to ask like somebody that's in the industry. Like, what do you think about the idea that, so it isn't really like any other, or it is like every other industry, and basically, at least the bud tender position in Illinois, you're like a glorified arm in a vending machine.
Exactly. Exactly. If I knew that what my real job was greeter slash cashier slash bathroom cleaner, I don't know if I would have applied for this job.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, that is my experience, and
Well,
I think that was something that was reflected as well in my coworkers.
and it's funny, we're talking about like what you experienced, but what did you think going into it? What did you think it was going to be?
What did that is a great question. I mean, of course, I probably had a lot of lofty, idealized,
Sure.
whatever about what it's like. I had worked a lot of food service beforehand. I mean, at the time, I was trying to be an artist and have a job to support myself. So I was doing things like retail and food service, and it was awful. And so I really thought this would be a great alternative, something that actually might be good.
Mm-hmm.
What did I expect? What did I expect? Well, I think, and this isn't necessarily the fault of Sunnyside, but Wrigleyville is such a high populated area that you see so many people every day that I sort of expected it to be a little bit like, oh, we'd have consultations. I would, maybe get to know the people in the neighborhood and what they like, but it's really not like that. It is people coming in, not wanting to wait more than 5 minutes, or else they will really start to get, revved up about it. You go to the cash register. I just want the highest THC. You give them the thing, and then they leave. And that's not the fault of the company. It is just what the clientele are needing and expecting. But I was a little sad about that. That there didn't seem to be much soul in what was happening. It felt very much like a vending machine.
Yeah. And I say that because I just really do feel like as soon as they can figure out how to put a vending machine in a cannabis, and they kind of have, dude, think about it. So I don't know how it works at Sunnyside and Wrigleyville, but I've seen these new dispensaries pop up where you've got like, I mean, I'm sure you can deal with a person if you prefer to, but it seems like everybody comes in, you tap on the iPad or whatever, and then there's still somebody involved in dispensing it, but you
Yeah,
like they just dispense it. There's still very much more in that instance, an arm in a vending machine. It's just kind of
yeah,
like a human operated vending machine
yep, yeah.
or
And a lot of I
dispenser,
think
dispensary.
there you go. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think a good chunk of that is the regulations that are being placed, especially on the recreational market. I guess the medical market too, where like you're not allowed to open the
Right.
container in the store. You
Mm-hmm.
really can't. You really don't know the quality of what you're getting until you smoke it, basically. And a lot of customers would come back and be like, I had somebody recommend this strain and it was terrible. And sorry, that was just the wrong batch, and there's kind of no way to know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it is a little bit like just kind of like tossing things out. Like, here, you're gonna get this
Mm-hmm.
one. Just here you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we can blame some of these companies for that. They all
Oh,
market
yeah.
themselves as CPG companies, consumer packaged goods. They believe cannabis should be consumer packaged, it's pre-packaged, right? And to their point, like, look, it's not like they want it to be shitty and they want it to be a gamble, which is the
Of
case right
course.
now. It's not like they would choose that. In fact, they use Coca-Cola as an example a lot of times when I've heard, their discussions like that. They want to be, I know when I grab a Coca-Cola, like, look, I've had a few bad Cokes in my life, but like, I know what a Coca-Cola is going to taste like and the
Sure.
experience is going to be,
Sure.
so
Yes.
they want
Yes.
that. And it's not that they don't want that, but the point I'm trying to make is that maybe at least for like flower, like, look, yeah, certain parts of cannabis are CPG, edibles,
Right.
vapes,
Sure.
you know, uh, what are the ones?
Shake even I would consider. I would
Maybe,
be
yeah,
fine with
yeah,
getting that. Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to use it for cooking or whatever, but like a
Hmm.
smokable, like a
Yeah.
flower. it's got to be like produce. Like when I go to the produce market,
Sure.
no, it's not like the strawberries are packaged. I'm able to look at the strawberries, and dude, I looked at strawberries the other day and I was like, looked at a few packages. I was like, these are not good strawberries. Not going to get
Yeah.
any today.
Exactly. Yeah. These are moldy. And it's like that just happens sometimes. But if
Mm-hmm.
you bought the strawberries and then you opened it, oh my God, they're moldy. That's so like there's
Yeah,
no,
it's like,
almost no excuse for that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, well, that sucks, but at least it's less of a leap if we were to do it
Sure.
deli style. That's the pitch I've always made,
Yeah.
you know?
And I can't tell you how many times this would be a daily occurrence. We'd have somebody come in with an out-of-state license. They'd look around, they go, what is this? Is like TSA. In Colorado, they basically just throw you nugs for walking in the door.
Mm-hmm.
In Florida, it's a lot like this. And we heard that every day. Um, that was just another struggle with working there. Again, not really about the company, maybe it is a little bit, but the regulations really make it hard to be a bud tender. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think in a way they can all be blamed a little bit for that too, because the cannabis culture in many ways is shaped by them. And to their credit, some of these companies have started to try to lean into terpenes, but we don't
sure,
have
sure,
to
sure,
get into
sure.
this. But I've
Yeah,
talked
sure.
to like his name is Samuel Bannister. If people want to check out the episode, he literally is I think one of the only living individuals with a set of cannabinoids that bear his initials. And he basically says the entourage effect is bullshit. So if you want to see that episode,
Interesting.
because basically what he describes, just to give you it in a nutshell for folks, like your cannabinoid receptors can only process cannabinoids. Like it's not like terpenes can just float in and go through your cannabinoid receptor. Like that's not how it works. Now,
Interesting.
anyways, this is a very charged political topic.
That's okay.
So,
I know it is. I know it is.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
really have a strong feeling either way. I do think it's interesting as we are learning more about this, and we're still
Mm-hmm.
in the baby
Absolutely.
stages, pretty much. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I wanted to give some credit because it does seem like they're trying to change the paradigm of how people purchase things, but I
Yeah.
still don't think it's in the right direction. And
Sure.
it just seems like they're setting their employees up a bit for failure. If you're not able to
And that
speak
definitely.
informatively on the product, you can't get samples to speak like from a place of knowing, like,
Yep.
yeah, I like this. This is what you would
Absolutely.
want, you know?
Absolutely.
Anything else on just like shitty working conditions, because that is the main topic at hand. It's easy to spiral off into
Yeah.
some
Sure.
themes that are just wrong
Sure.
in Illinois, but
I mean, I think the state of the working class in corporate America is just particularly awful, regardless of where you go. But I mean, I had a lot of people, telling me, I'm in school right now to become a therapist, and I sort of had that role a little bit. They called me mommy while I worked there, and I had people literally telling me, from this place makes me sad to I want to kill myself. Like literally, people would tell me that. And it would break my heart. It would break my heart to not only not have the change that we're requesting, but to be told that the change that we're requesting is out of the question, that we should be grateful for what's happening right now, that it's not exhausting, that this is just a job. I think the gaslighting on top of the physical conditions uh, is really why I'm here, for example.
yeah, yeah. And I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here. I
You go
hate
ahead.
to say it, but it's like with the idea that this is a job that I truly think will be phased out by automation. Like you if the ID requirement is a thing, okay, you stick your ID into this machine, it scans it and verifies it. Okay, now you can buy whatever pot you
Right.
want. I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's the way it's going to go if people get
Yeah.
comfortable enough. And so if you think about it, the bud tender position, I don't
Yeah.
know how much longer it remains a thing. And that's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, it's a little weird. I like a bartender, so it's like,
Sure.
especially a good one. So like you have a
Sure.
good conversation, they can tell you what you may like, right? So it is sad to think about it, but when they say like you should be privileged, or you should be, what did they say? You should
Grateful.
grateful. Obviously that's crass given the circumstances, but I'm just wondering if those big wigs are thinking like, you should be grateful because, dude, it's a matter of time
Right.
before we put a fucking
Sure.
machine in there.
It is an
So
interesting
enjoy it while
point.
it lasts, you
Yeah,
know?
that is a very interesting point. It's something I hadn't considered before. But to that point, there are many times when I would be working there and I would think to myself, like, why am I here? Like, why do I
Yeah.
need to be here for the company? Couldn't the machine do this? Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And I again, it doesn't like, I don't love saying what I just said. It's just
For
like,
sure. For sure.
you know, if we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that this is probably the way they're thinking. Like they're thinking, how can we get the most money? Could we
Yeah.
just cut people out of the equation altogether?
Yeah.
Like get it just the people growing for us because we don't want to do that. Fuck getting in the
Yeah.
fields. We wear suits, you know.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But how do we
Exactly.
get the people to buy our weed?
Yeah.
You know, we're spending an awful lot of money on these bud
Right.
tenders.
On people. Yeah. Right. Right. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I'm thinking a little bit about how the alcohol culture is now. And you have
Right.
liquor stores,
Yes.
which I guess is kind of like the format of what a Sunnyside is.
Mhm.
But then you also have a bar. And I don't think is it legal in this state to have like a smoking lounge recreationally, where
Uh,
maybe you could have bud tenders in a more
so
appropriate
there
setting?
are smoking lounges, like so Rise Mundaline has a smoking lounge on site, a consumption lounge where you can, I think it's the only
Consumption lounge.
consumption lounge in Illinois that you can purchase cannabis at. Now, there's some rare
Really?
things going on, in my opinion, in Southern Illinois where there are at least two consumption lounges that I know of that are not dispensaries. They're just private locations you can bring your own weed to and smoke at. And then I've also been, just this is anecdotal, but it was just remarkable because literally the cannabis program at SIU. So I went to, there's a cannabis program, Cannabis Science Center, I think is what it's called, if folks want to look it up. I went with many faculty members from that science center to this bar that I think is called Clark's, or it's, fuck, I'm forgetting the name. I feel so bad because they let you smoke outside. And it was crazy because this lady said something to me. She's like, you can't smoke in public. And I was like, that, but they told me I can. And the person that owned the establishment was like, look, if they got a problem with you smoking, tell them that they can move down a seat. That's what we tell people with cigarettes. That's what we tell people with weed. Enjoy your weed. And I was just
Yeah.
like,
Interesting.
so sorry for giving you such a
Wow.
long answer.
Oh
Um,
no, that's cool. This is great to know.
what was your
Um,
what was your question though? Sorry, I feel like I just,
if it was legal to have a consumption lounge in Illinois right now, because I hadn't heard of one. I think
yeah.
like we had the Sesh bus come by, and I think that's like sort of like a form of that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I actually never been.
I feel bad because I went to that for the first time and it was pretty cool.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
It's just like a bus.
Yeah, yeah, just a
You just go
bus. I
in,
went on
smoke a
there.
little
There
bit.
was free weed. I didn't get the memo that apparently I could have grabbed as much as I wanted. I was trying to be like nice and only grabbed one of each. But dude, I saw other people are like, dude, I grabbed like 3 for my sister, 5 for my grandma, and I'm just like, God damn, dude, I didn't know you could
Wow.
literally just grab them.
It's
Anyways,
so strange on the one hand to have regulations like you're not allowed to even think of weed until you buy it. And then to have like the sesh bus where it's just like just take a handful and go, that's fine.
yeah, and that's another thing that's going to be in our history document because it's an interesting thing where somebody described how that's done. So, fun fact: gifting is legal in Illinois, and that's why they're able to do it.
Okay. Okay.
But here's my question. So somebody described how it was done in a Grown In article that will be included in our history document. But basically, they said what we do is we have our employees purchase their amount. We give them the cash, they purchase their amount, or maybe they don't say that, but that's probably what happens. They get a stipend to like purchase an amount of cannabis, their legal amount. They bring it to the bus or to the location, and then everybody does that and they bring it. But it's like, my question is, who's in possession of that like lump sum quantity? Because technically
Right.
speaking, that's illegal. That's illegal. Like, as long as you're, it's weird. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble,
It
but like,
definitely feels like some kind of loophole. Definitely.
look, I encourage it. Whatever we can do to
Right.
proliferate giving each other cannabis. I'm just saying, like, if
Sure.
I did that, I think if I did, like, that's my thing. It's like, it's
Interesting.
weird that they're allowed to do it because they're like these companies, but like,
Right.
if I did it, they might look into the technicalities of how I did it and how much I, you know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
rules are, we're playing by two sets of
Yeah.
rules. So
Interesting.
Um, anyways, I digress. You got coffee cold today. I don't drink coffee very often. It's
Oh,
funny. Shout out to Southern Illinois. I've got my Quattro's cup. Great pizza joint
nice.
down there.
Okay.
But yeah, my apologies for all the tangents today, my friend.
Oh no, this has been very interesting.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun chatting with you, and if
Yeah.
the door's always open for you to come back on. But I guess as we close, um, I want to try to just give you the space because I keep jumping in and
Yeah.
taking us on tangents. Anything you felt like we didn't cover today, or something that people should take home? Um,
I think I think I've come around to the point where I've accepted that work is not meant to make you happy. Work is work. Work is just not, it's not something that is, so joyful. That being said, in my experience working at Sunnyside with my coworkers, they all feel that way. They're tired, blah blah blah. Work sucks. I know, kind of thing. But if you come in and you're kind to them and you are asking, I've never heard of weed before. What is this about? They will literally sit with you and gladly explain their expertise, their knowledge in a very, very kind and generous way. Never, ever, ever have I ever heard any of my coworkers being like, oh yeah, I'm just going to give them this just to get them out of here. You know what I mean? So treat these retail workers with kindness, and you will get that back. Especially at the Sunnyside Wrigleyville location, my coworkers are some of the best people I've ever worked with. Um, and I think that is just something that often goes unsaid. It's just how to treat people in the retail space. That makes their job about half less bad.
yeah, well said. I mean, it's sad that that seems like it should go without saying. Treat these people
Right.
like humans,
Right. Right.
But yeah, yeah. Well, anything
What
else, my
strain are
friend?
you smoking on?
Oh, that's a good question. Raspberry parfait. Some of my
Oh,
homegrown.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh, cool. Cool.
just gotta just for folks. Like I think this is like one plant, and this is
Oh
one of the
wow.
jars. This is just one of
Yes.
the jars. I got like a few just jars
Yes.
full of really good weed. So if
That's
you
awesome.
don't grow at home, folks, consider it. And it's not like
It's
I'm.
easier than you think.
Yeah, I was about to say I am not the sharpest tool in the toolbox or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
I think I'm the tooliest tool in the toolbox.
Sure.
But yeah, um, I guess before we go, man, we jumped right into all the issues. Just I always like to ask cannabis people, how'd you find cannabis?
My friend introduced it to me in college, like many of us, I think.
The good old college try.
The good old college try. And it was pretty profound for me, like, not gonna lie. It was a great moment for me to realize that I didn't have to enjoy alcohol, that there was nothing wrong with me for not enjoying alcohol, and that there was something out there for me that could help me unwind in a way that a lot of people do. And that it's not a competition, but it is actually safer than alcohol to consume and enjoy, not only in the behavior that it encourages, but in the literal, like, consuming of it. And I pretty much, that has been my poison since. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Cool. That's awesome to hear. It's always cool to hear. So you got introduced to it in college.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts about it before then? Just
It's
curious.
it's funny. I knew people in my town growing up in high school. I mean, like, there was research you shouldn't smoke before a certain age, but I
Sure.
literally was like, wow, they've thrown their life away.
Mm-hmm.
That they are going to die. You know what I mean? Like, they've lost their mind. And then I tried it and I went, this is what this is all about. This is what, like, all of that hatred and propaganda was for. And then you start to realize what was really behind it and things, and etc. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I was, it's good to encourage kids not to use drugs, but I would be one of those people who would go to elementary schools, the dare people, and don't even think about it, don't even touch it. So it was kind of interesting how I came in with a very, I guess, conservative approach to it. And then, and almost immediately I was like, what?
Right.
This is it? And then, yeah.
Yeah. They
I'm not
got you,
dead. I haven't
man.
lost my mind. Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
same here, man. I came from
Okay.
somebody like who would say like I would never do that to
Yeah.
somebody like I'm always gonna do this and everybody should do this.
Sure, 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 sure.
Yeah. Cool, dude. Well, hey, it was a pleasure speaking to you
Yeah, you
today.
too, Cole. You
Would love
too.
to connect again. And
Sure.
folks, hope you found this conversation as valuable as I did. We'll see you in
Yeah,
the
this has
next
been
episode.
very enlightening. Thank you so much.
Yep. Take care, folks.